Hi friends, this is Chris. Welcome back to the channel, and this is your daily news fix. So we're going to talk about the housing market, the state of the American consumer, and why you should pay attention to the news every day because ultimately it'll make you a lot of money. So let's just jump right in. You can see here, August home sales declined to slowest pace since January. And it's not that no one's buying a house, just that it's slowing down. I mean, interest rates are high and inventory levels are low. You can see this here. Actually, a big portion of the home sales are actually in the South. And again, everything's going to depend on your neck of the woods, the particular neighborhood you're looking at. But I want you just to see that kind of overall trend. So a lot of the sales for home sales are in the South. Yes, but we do still have action in West, Midwest, and the Northeast, but just larger in the South. It boils down the pricing from what I can tell. And I'll show you guys what I mean by that. So if you take a look at this, so this is the price of homes. So, 0 to 100K, 100K to 250, 250 to 500, then you got 500 to 750, 750 to a million, and then over a million. Now, if you take a look at the U.S. as a whole, kind of the biggest chunk of prices is the light blue here, which is the 250 to 500K, right? If you're looking for a home, that's kind of the largest segment. And the thing that really stood out to me is basically the South and the Midwest. You guys can see it, the light blue have the largest sort of, segment of that type of housing. If you want to look at, say, the West, right, you can see that sort of affordable housing, I would call it, is much, much less. And this is just reality. You're not going to find that many houses that are 0 to 100, not in this market. You can find stuff that's 100 to 250. That's certainly possible. And it looks like the Midwest has the bulk of that. I can just see the numbers here. And then obviously then when you look at, like, say, the million plus, then you're looking at the West. And then it makes no wonder that, hey, with work from home and options to, not have to go in the office and you can just do it on a computer and live anywhere, why not save on your housing costs, right? You guys can see it right here. The other thing is too, which is a big part of this, because remember, we're talking about the American consumer and the housing market, is essentially, this is sort of an important number. For many people, they have to use, and this is about households, not just one person, but household, they have to use 44% of their income to covering their housing costs. And that is a very, very large portion. And when you see this kind of number, this is sort of where I have doubts that the American consumer is going to go out and buy a new Tesla, or they're going to go out and, lots and lots of shopping for clothes, et cetera, right? In order for companies to make money, you got to have people who have money to buy said products from said companies. And I think this is probably the biggest telling factor right here, is that housing costs are just too high, right? 44%, or actually, we'll just read it. The median American household needed 44% of his income to cover annual payments on a medium-priced home, right? So if you're just basically in the middle, you're using a large portion of your money to pay for just living in your house. If you take a look at this, wage and prices, like how do they correspond? So there was a period back in 2022 when prices were growing way faster than wages. Then you had an interesting period where, like, prices plummeted compared to wages, right? This is back in 2020. And now we're kind of like coming to a middle point. And that's essentially what you want, is the equilibrium to where, like, things are balancing out, where people actually feel like, hey, I have enough money to live. Now, the issue is, though, I think for far too long, for many industries, your wages haven't kept up with the cost of living. And we're seeing it, right? When you see these kind of numbers of, like, because you could have gotten a raise last year, you totally could have. But, like, if you have to use 44% of your household income to cover your housing costs, it's just too much, right? You want that number to be more like 30, 20% kind of thing. Moreover, if you look at, like, people's savings accounts, so basically all these numbers have been saying the same thing for a while, but I'm just pointing out to you in different ways. In 2020 and 2021, people had a lot of excess savings. Basically, you couldn't go on vacation, the malls were closed, right? You couldn't really fly anywhere. It's just, you couldn't spend money. The restaurants were closed, etc. Now that things are starting to open up again, people are using their savings accounts. That's just a thing. Also, too, the stimulus check money has ended, right? So basically, people's savings accounts are going down. They're using too much money to pay for the housing expenses, essentially. Moreover, if you have a car, it's really expensive these days. And I probably don't have to tell you that. You probably already know. So the average monthly payment for a new car is $725. And then the average payment for a new one is around $500. And you can kind of see it here. It's just a trend up, right? Things cost more money. Moreover, this is an interesting one. This is the question here. What households say about obtaining credit now versus a year ago? So people who say it's much easier, it's like this little segment up there. So not that many people say it's easier to get credit than before. Equally or less hard. So it's the segment here. Then you got somewhat harder and much harder. So I'm just looking at the chart here. In the much harder and somewhat harder camp, you have maybe 55-ish people are saying that. So, just be honest here, there's like, for some people, they're saying it's the same, but no one's really saying it's much easier to get credit. And we've been seeing this a lot. Essentially, the banks are nervous, of course, if you're going to be able to pay back their money or not. Also, too, this is actually an important point, is like, if we start to see a cascade of defaults, which there is a possibility that there's been some sort of people have been warning you about, myself included, that student loans will have to be repaid starting in October. So I think that's just a couple weeks away. And what's that going to do with people's car payments? Right? You have to choose between, say, making my car payment or making my student loan payment. You got to pay the car because you got to get to work, right, et cetera. And still, your job's like, hey, it doesn't pay enough. And the reason why I always talk about, say, pay attention to the news and these kind of things is when I look at these numbers, I can see why personally, scam content is so popular on YouTube, because there's so many people out there struggling, right? And the number one thing that I don't have to tell you, but you probably know, but the number one thing that people search for is like, how can I make more money? Because that's the problem that I would say the average person has right now. It's just your housing costs are too much. How can I make more money? Your food costs are too much. How can I make more money, et cetera? And this is sort of why we cover this story, which is really important. The worker strike with the auto workers, right? So, they want more money and they things cost too much. And when you see this kind of headline that, they wanted that 32-hour work week, I don't think the average American is going to be too sympathetic to that. That's my opinion on that. I'd be curious if you guys agree or disagree with my assessment. I just don't think many people are like, oh yeah, you totally should do that. I don't think people are say that. Now, I think people will be sympathetic to, say, maybe pay raises, but not necessarily working less. So as you can see the headlines here, UAW's demand for a 32-hour work week takes a backseat in talks. So I think there's a low chance that they're going to get that. But you do want to pay attention to this because, the more workers that see that, hey, the other worker got a raise, my uncle got a raise, my aunt got a raise, my brother, my sister got raises, et cetera, I should get a raise too. And you start thinking to yourself, okay, what's going on with my work and these kind of things. Now, I don't envy these people in their situation. I've said it many times on their channel. It's mostly because I think, sadly, and I don't want to be mean, but I just think they're easier to replace compared to different kinds of industries. So, for example, as I say many times, why should you pay us the news? How can it make you a lot of money? Whenever I see these kind of deals, this is the cybersecurity, and I think you guys know this, right? Cybersecurity is more difficult to replace. Like, these kind of people are just harder to find compared to, say, an auto worker. And just trying to be nice about it, but basically, you got to have skills that people are willing to pay you a lot of money for. And evidently, Cisco, for example, look at the headline. Cisco makes largest ever acquisition by cybersecurity company Splunk for $28 billion in cash. It's like, oh my God. So if you want to be rich in this world, own Splunk. You're selling this thing for $28 billion in cash. Cisco's like just dumping money on you. And I've said this so many times. I think cybersecurity is one of the best fields. It is true though that it is not easy, right? And that's something that is difficult to tell people on YouTube. The truth. It's difficult to tell people, hey, you got to work hard. Hey, you got to train. Hey, you got to do things that other people don't want to do. This is something that, a lot of kids need to hear, though, I think, is that cybersecurity is really good. Another thing, too, which I think is important, is sometimes people get angry and upset. Oh, Chris, I don't want to learn computers. I don't want to go to college, this kind of stuff. And it's true. That's not the only way to be successful. In fact, if you read the headlines, again, why you want to pay attention to the news, it can make you money. Read it here. States announced major push to get 20 million installed heat pumps, a cleaner alternative to get gas furnaces that provide AC. I've said this so many times. Many of the trades, so this would be carpenters and electricians, these kind of things, plus the HVAC, right? So if you're installing new, here it's the heat pumps, right? Or you're installing AC or fixing AC, these kind of things, that need is never going to go away, right? People need that, need to stay warm in the winter and stay cool in the summer. It's like a thing. And moreover, if we have a lot of, say, buildings that are in bad shape, like I've been reading, like I said, I read the news every day, but I've been reading in some states, some neighborhoods, Some of the schools have like really terrible heating or AC. And in fact, if it gets too hot, they just can't even have students in the building because it's just not safe. And so these kind of things, that there's going to be money that's going to go into, either people want to replace whatever units they have to save money on power, right? Because energy is expensive, or their system is just really, really old and needs to be replaced. But there are jobs other than cybersecurity. I want to emphasize that. Said so many times on the channel. I personally think cybersecurity is probably going to pay more, but that's not necessarily for everybody, right? I understand that, and this is a real thing. Like some of the trade jobs or some of these like HVAC jobs are very, very good. Maintenance, installation, this kind of stuff, there will always be opportunity there. And moreover, I talk about healthcare all the time. There's not a particular news article about that today on healthcare, but again, this is something that isn't necessarily going to go away anytime soon. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on any one of these things. I hope you understand why we do news every day, why I'm like, hey, what's going on with this stuff? Like you pay attention to the interest rates, like this kind of stuff, it's going to stay elevated. So that means we're going to stay in this environment for a while where people are probably going to be a little bit more cautious with their money, et cetera. Because essentially when the interest rates go up, you got to pay more on your credit cards. It just puts more strain on you and these kind of things. So that's my thoughts on this. I appreciate your time, and I'll catch you next video.